London Ablaze, Tragedy, Blame, and Rebirth in 1666. Ladies and gentlemen, picture this: a bustling city of narrow streets, overcrowded wooden houses, and open flames flickering in every hearth and at the tip of every candle. It's September 1666, and London is about to get an impromptu lesson in fire safety the hard way. There are unique elements to this story, some odd, some surprising, some tragic, and at least a few you probably never knew. So you'll want to stay with us to the end. Oh, and don't forget to like, share, hit the notification button, and comment. Such things are the currency of the realm, and we appreciate your acknowledgement. The Great Fire of London. It's a story etched into the annals of history, and not just because it scorched a significant portion of the city. This wasn't just any fire, it was the fire. A blaze so devastating that it transformed the cityscape, wiped out thousands of homes, and paved the way, literally, for modern London as we know it today. But why are we still talking about this fire almost 4 centuries later? What makes it so significant? Well, for one, it's the perfect storm of human error, bad urban planning, and an oops moment that spiraled way out of control. And like any great historical disaster, it comes packed with lessons that are as relevant today as they were in 1666. So, let's roll back the clock and see how a simple spark set London ablaze. Before we dive into the fiery chaos, let's set the stage. London in 1666 was a city teetering on the edge of disaster, even before a single flame was lit. Overcrowding was a way of life. Picture narrow, winding streets crammed with timber-framed buildings that leaned in so closely they could practically hug each other. These buildings weren't just made of wood. They were covered in tar and pitch. Why, you ask? Because waterproofing was a priority. Tar was used to protect wood from rotting in damp conditions, especially in a city prone to rain. Practical? Yes. A fire hazard? Absolutely. And fire safety? Let's just say it wasn't a top priority. Open flames were everywhere: candles, fireplaces, ovens. And firefighting technology consisted of buckets, ladders, and a hearty dose of wishful thinking. The city had recently been ravaged by the Great Plague, so spirits and public health measures weren't exactly at their peak. The perfect recipe for disaster, right? All it needed was one spark. And that spark arrived on the night of September 2nd, 1666, courtesy of a certain Thomas Farriner, a baker in Pudding Lane. And yes, you heard that right, pudding. But trust me, there was nothing sweet about what happened next. And by the way, this true cause of the fire was not uncovered until a great deal of time had passed. Because in a rush to judgment and the public need for answers, someone else had taken the blame and paid the price. More on that later. It all started innocently enough. Farriner allegedly forgot to extinguish his oven before heading to bed. By the early hours of the morning, his bakery was ablaze, and so were his neighbors' homes. Londoners, already used to small fires, weren't too alarmed at first. But by the time dawn broke, it was clear this was no ordinary blaze. The fire leaped from house to house, like a pyromaniac with a grudge. The problem? Strong winds carried sparks across the tightly packed city, and firefighting efforts were disorganized at best. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, couldn't be bothered with the fact that his town was on fire. His initial response was pish, followed by a vague, dismissive remark and absolutely no helpful ideas about how to contain the blaze. His lack of leadership left citizens floundering and flames soaring. By the second day, the fire had engulfed major parts of the city, including 87 parish churches and the iconic St. Paul's Cathedral. St. Paul's, by the way, was under renovation and conveniently covered in wooden scaffolding, basically turning it into the fire's VIP section. Thousands of people fled their homes, carrying whatever they could, including, in some cases, their bedposts. Because nothing says survival like lugging a mattress frame through a burning city. The turning point came when the flames reached the warehouse along the Thames. Now, these weren't just any warehouses. They were packed with highly flammable materials like oil, tar, and wine. Yes, wine is flammable. When these caught fire, it was game over. The inferno raged uncontrollably, spreading faster than anyone could imagine. For days, Londoners battled to save what they could. But it was clear the city was losing. Efforts to create fire breaks by demolishing buildings were delayed, partly because property owners demanded compensation before allowing their homes to be destroyed. Talk about not having your priorities straight. By the time King Charles II himself ordered the use of gunpowder to create wider breaks, much of the city was already ash. When the fire finally burned out on September 6th, it had left devastation in its wake. Over 13,000 homes, countless businesses, and the medieval heart of London were gone. Miraculously, the official death toll was reported as just a handful, though modern historians suspect that the true number was far higher, particularly among the poor whose deaths were unrecorded. But here's the twist. From the ashes of tragedy rose opportunity. The Great Fire of London became a catalyst for change. Gone were the wood tar-coated death traps. In their place emerged buildings made of brick and stone. The city introduced stricter building codes, improved firefighting methods, and established fire insurance companies. Even Sir Christopher Wren, the architect behind the new St. Paul's Cathedral, got his chance to shine. Though, fun fact, his grand plan for a totally redesigned city was rejected. Turns out the people didn't like giving up their old street layouts, even when they're, well, toast. Tragedy often leaves us desperate for answers. And in the wake of the Great Fire, emotions ran high. Enter Robert Hubert, a French watchmaker who became the unfortunate scapegoat for the disaster. Londoners, reeling from the destruction, were quick to point fingers at Hubert, a foreigner and a Catholic. He was an easy target. Hubert confessed to starting the fire, claiming he had thrown a fireball into a foreigner's bakery. The problem? He wasn't even in London when the fire began, and his confession was riddled with inconsistencies. He couldn't accurately describe the bakery or explain how his supposed method would work. Why confess? Hubert, described as a poor, distracted wretch, likely struggled with a mental instability and may not have understood the implications of his admission. Others suggest he might have been coerced. And though there's no direct evidence of torture, pressure to find the culprit, especially a foreigner, was intense. Why did the authorities accept such a flawed confession? Londoners were desperate for closure, and Hubert's story fit the narrative of foreign sabotage. His status as a French Catholic made him a convenient target in a time of fear and xenophobia. Hubert was convicted and executed. his innocence recognized only years later. This tragic case is a reminder of how fear and prejudice, combined with the need for answers, can cloud judgment and lead to injustice. What can we take away from this fiery chapter in history? First, maybe double-check your oven before bedtime. Second, it's a lesson in how even the greatest tragedies can become opportunities for change, learning, and growth. London's resilience in the face of disaster reminds us that rebuilding, whether it's cities, lives, or hope itself, is always possible. So, here's an ounce. Great tragedy becomes a great opportunity to learn, change, grow, and prevent future tragedies. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, even the smallest spark can change everything. And that's it. An ounce, submitted for your consideration. Hope you enjoyed that little episode, and if you did, please take the time to give us a like, a share, hit the notify button, and even leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And all of that activity helps us to become more visible on the web, and we need your help. Thanks.